Hi, my name is Kenny Rains and this is Rainmaker 3D, and today we're going to be making a UV light curing box for our Resin 3D prints. So I've got a box, I have an optional turntable, some aluminum foil, some UV LEDs that I got from Amazon, hot glue gun, box cutter, and some duct tape, some actual aluminum duct tape. So why do we need a UV curing box? So if you have a Resin 3D printer, like the three I've got back here, whenever you go ahead and you print off something, all you're doing is you're tacking each layer together. And so that tacking is temporary. Whenever you bathe it in UV light, whether that's in the sun, or that's in a box like this, or in a professionally made like this Elegoo Saturn, or not Saturn, but the Mercury UV light curing box, you go ahead and you permanently form these layers together, and yeah, so that's why you need a UV light curing box. So now we're going to go through the process of making your own. The reason I'm making my own is because I've got this Anycubic Photon Mono X6K, and it's a little bit big in regards to if I printed off something huge, it wouldn't quite fit in the wash station. So we're going to make our own wash station, and also just for the lights, be able to bathe it a little bit more in UV. I have made one of these already. In fact, you can use any box. You don't have to have a professionally made box. This one is literally an ice chest that I just fill with aluminum foil and UV LEDs, and it's worked absolutely great. But I wanted one that looked a little bit more professional. So I had these panels, went and laser cut them at a community college. And now what we're going to do is we're going to skin the inside with aluminum foil. Aluminum does reflect UV, it does absorb some UV, so it's not the absolute best thing in the world, but it's certainly the best thing you can get for under $10, unless you're going to wrap your UV box with gold foil. So I'd just go with aluminum foil, but we're trying to do this a little bit on the cheap. So we'll skirt this whole thing in aluminum foil, then we'll line it with the UV LEDs, and we'll use hot glue to hold the aluminum foil in the box. And then the UV LEDs that I chose have 3M adhesive on the back, and we may need to hot glue that as well. We'll see as we get into making this. So with that said, here we go. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my box, whatever box you have, I'm going to turn it upside down, and I'm going to also go ahead and get my hot glue gun heating up as we work on this. So we'll let that heat up, and we will start tearing off aluminum foil sheets. I did opt for the heavy duty aluminum foil. So that way it's a little bit less prone to being torn up. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut off this remnant with my razor blade after I hot glue everything in. And I'm not doing anything exact right now, I'm just ballparking the measurements here for the aluminum foil. getting close to having it all skirted in. All right, we got some hot glue now. So, with that said, we'll go ahead and start laying some beads in the box. And I know you can't see what I'm hot gluing in the box, but I'm just laying a few strands so that way the aluminum foil has got some stuff to grip on it. All right, that's one down. All right, that's two down. So this is the third box I've made. I made one for a previous employer where I set up a resin 3D printing station that we made tooling with. I made one for myself out of that ice chest. And then now we have the professional one with the Rainmaker 3D logo making. Like I said, you can make this with a cardboard box if your heart desires. You can make it with an ice chest. You can make it with about anything you can think of, so long as you can go ahead and close it off to keep the UV light from just going everywhere, because it's really not good for you to look at UV light for extended periods of time. So it can be damaging to your eyes. So be mindful of that. Don't just sit there and stare at your 3D printer or your light box without any sunglasses or eye protection. Wouldn't advise doing that. So go ahead and start filling in the corner pieces now. And also, in regards to having nice, clean, flat aluminum foil, that's not absolutely necessary. All we're doing is just making essentially a reflector box. So this thing does not need to be absolutely perfect. We just need to skin the thing in aluminum foil and put the UV LEDs in. Like I said, at the end of this, I'm just going to run the top with a razor blade and all right. So now that we've got this done, we'll go ahead and we'll start cutting our aluminum foil off. So that way we can get a nice clean box. So, the big thing too to keep in mind is you want to make sure that you're getting UV LEDs whenever you buy them from whatever retailer you're going to purchase them from. Now, granted, you're not going to be getting true UV. You know, all this is high wavelength UV, low wavelength visible. Because you can't see true UV as a human. But these low wavelength visible ones work very good for this type of curing. So that said, they will be good enough for our purposes. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to load up a second glue stick here, and I'm going to just go ahead and make sure that I get these in really good. Okay. All right, so we now have, other than the lid, we've got the inside of our box. So now we'll go ahead and we'll skirt the lid, scrape off our excess hot glue that we had as well. A little bit of spillage on the lid. We'll go ahead and also set this with the 3D prints over on my other workbench. Alright, so there we go. We got the majority of the spilled hot glue off of our 3D resin curing box. So now we'll go ahead and you'll be able to see this a lot better. What I'm doing. We'll go ahead and just do this as well. All right, so that is our lid. So now we'll go ahead and cut the excess off of it. All right, So now that looks pretty good. So we'll start working on lining the inside with the UV LEDs. So I'm going to go ahead and flip the box back up. And I'm going to work on doing this from the top. Now, we'll have to kind of experiment a little bit with this because we may not need to use all of the LED strip and we may cut off the end. So the big thing I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to put both power leads near the top of the box, just like I did on my previous box builds I've done. So that way, because the power cord, as you can see, they have to be pretty close to each other for the single to double barrel jack adapter that comes with this kit, with these LEDs, because we're going to have one line of UV LEDs on the lid and then another line of UV LEDs in the box. So right now we're working on putting the UV LEDs in the box. And so I'm just making a winding pattern down the box. And just slowly working my way down to the bottom of the box. The other thing I probably should have done, and we'll go ahead and just try it now, is we should probably check to make sure that these work. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll go ahead and plug it up to power. Oh yeah, that one works. That one works. And we'll just make sure that the adapter works as well. Yep. And yep. So we know that our LEDs work, so that's good news. Didn't really have a backup plan if they didn't. So also, if your box that you're making was considerably bigger than this, for whatever reason, maybe you had a different purpose in mind for what you were trying to cure with UV light, you could always daisy chain these together with a soldering iron, or even just with getting some bullet connectors if you didn't want to solder or you didn't have the equipment to solder. So that's something to keep in mind. In our case here, we won't need to do that. We're going to be able to get away with just this one. And we're going to have just enough here to make it to the bottom of the box in our case. And we are almost done here. So we'll go ahead and just run this last little bit around the bottom of the box. And bada boom, bada bing. We now have a light curing box minus the lid. The lid should go much faster. So we'll go ahead and throw this stuff away. All right, so now once again, I want to just emphasize, both of these barrel jacks need to be pretty close to each other if you're going to be using the same setup that I'm using. So there's a few different ways to do the lid. I'm just going to go back and forth and snake them. You could do a big square. That's totally up to you. Ultimately, I said it really doesn't matter in regards to the distribution of the UV LEDs. We just want to have a soaking effect with UV light for our prints. So we're almost done here. And what I'm going to do for this is I will cut off the end for this one. And just make sure that if you do cut it off, that there's little points that you can see that have two little solder joints on it. And that's ideally where you need to cut it. So that way you don't mess up the wiring of the LEDs that you have. So let's go ahead and plug her in. All right, so looks pretty good. And stick a little bit more hot glue up here. And one thing I'll go ahead and do later is I'll go ahead and drill a little hole so that way these wires have a place to come out of the lid. May actually just go ahead and do that now, since I have my tools handy dandy. So we will switch this off. There's also a nice little switch that comes on this one. All right. Okay, so I'll clean that up. And ultimately though, what I've got is a nice UV curing box. The other thing you can do in it is you can put a little turntable as such, and I'll just put it out here for demonstration purposes of what you're actually doing. But this is a great little device that you can pick up, especially if you want to just show little videos of your 3D prints or pictures, whatever. And all it ultimately is a turntable. And it rotates your prints. And with that said, now you have a UV light curing box. You have an optional turntable if you wanted to throw that in the box, drill a hole so that way you could have a cord come through it as well. And that's everything you need to start curing your prints. Be on the lookout for a video on how to make your own washing station next. So thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.